Don't let them see my face. Please, just stand there. It was 9:40 on a Thursday night in March, behind a funeral hall in Sinsadong, when Adayeze Obi, 11 days from her visa renewal, heard it. The name on the wreaths inside owned the hospital that signed her paychecks, and the men sweeping the alley with camera lights answered to that name. Adayeze expected to point the boy back toward the door and keep walking, the way a woman with a visa keeps walking. What she did instead was photographed 400 times before midnight, and remembered far longer. The wreaths had been arriving since 4 that afternoon. She had counted them out of habit, the way she counted linen bags and bus stops and the days until the 25th, 61 standing arrangements, white chrysanthemums packed so tight they looked like frost. The funeral hall and the hospital across the road shared a laundry contract, which meant that twice a night Adayeze pushed a steel cart of pressed sheets from the service basement, across the loading bay, into the freight elevator, and back again in her navy uniform that still smelled of steam and bleach. Black sedans idled 3 deep along the curb, drivers stood beside them with their hands folded, and nobody looked directly at the 3rd floor, where the lights had been burning since Tuesday. The boy came out of the service door at a run, 9, perhaps 10, a black suit tailored for him, and still too formal for his body, one shoelace loose, a small ribbon pinned over his heart. He stopped when he saw her, breathing hard through his mouth, and then he did not run again, which was its own kind of decision. Down the alley, a camera flash went off against a wall, then another, closer, the way thunder closes distance. Adayeze understood the arithmetic before she understood the child. Her supervisor had a rule about staff and reporters. Her sister's school fees left Silim on the 28th. Her renewal papers sat in a plastic folder under her bed, signed by the very hospital whose owners were grieving upstairs. She had reasons to keep pushing the cart, practical reasons, necessary reasons. She reached into the cart instead and pulled out a warm gray blanket, fresh from the dryer. She did not know his name. She did not know why so many lenses wanted one small face. And she did not know that behind the glass of the 2nd floor landing, a tall man in morning black had stopped walking to watch a stranger open a blanket like a wall. The blanket opened with a sound like a small sail catching wind. Adayeze did not touch him first. She had learned that much in 5 months of pushing carts through a Seoul hospital. Hands go last, words go first, and even then you keep your voice low enough that a frightened person has to lean toward it. So she crouched, knees cracking against the polished floor of the funeral hall lobby, and held the gray blanket half open between her body and the boy's, and she said the only sentence her night class textbook had prepared her for. "Kenchanayo, chonan yogi ireo." It's all right, I work here. He did not answer. He stood in his stiff black jacket with the sleeves too long, a paper cup of barley tea shaking in both hands, tea already spilled down the front of him in a dark stripe, and behind him the sliding glass doors flashed white, 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 like a storm that had learned to stand still. "Hanyul Gun, Yula, look here." Just one shot of the boy. "Is it true your grandmother?" Adayeze put the blanket over his shoulders. Then she lifted the top edge and drew it up over his head like a hood, dryer warm, still smelling of hospital detergent and steam, and she felt the exact moment the small body under her hands stopped shaking and started leaning. "Don't look at them," she said, in English now, because Korean had run out. "Look at me." He looked at her, 6 years old, maybe 7, with a face swollen from crying in the particular way children cry when they have been told to be quiet about it. She walked him backward. That was the part she would remember later, when the incident report asked her to describe her actions in sequence. She never turned her back on the boy, and never showed the lenses anything except the wide gray wall of her own shoulders, and one hospital-issue blanket held up like a flag of a country nobody had heard of. 9 steps. 10. A microphone on a boom came in over her head and she pushed it away with her forearm the way she used to push goats off her mother's veranda in Enugu. Someone's hand caught the corner of the blanket and pulled. She caught it back and the lanyard around her neck snapped, and her ID badge went skidding across the marble and under a row of black plastic chairs, and she let it go. A man in a padded vest shouted, "Ajuma, kue noyo," "Let go of that kid," and she said, without turning, in the flat, calm voice she used on drunk patients at 2 a.m., "No." Then the service door, then the corridor, then the smell of bleach and hot cotton, then quiet. The linen room on the 2nd floor was 9 square meters of warmth and noise, 4 dryers rumbling like a low animal, towels stacked in white bricks to the ceiling. Adayeze pushed a laundry crate over with her foot, upended it, and sat. The boy stood in the doorway with the blanket still on his head. She did not pull him in. She poured barley tea from her thermos into the lid, blew on it, and set it on the floor between them, the way you set food down for a cat that has decided not to trust you yet. He sat. Not close. Close enough. My name is Adaize, she said. Everybody here says Ada, because they are busy people. She tapped the blanket. Damyo. Blanket. In my language we say aqua. Same thing. Keeps the cold out. The boy drank the tea in 3 swallows and held the empty lid. Do you want to go back? He shook his head so hard the blanket slipped. Okay, Adaize said. Then we fold towels. She showed him how. Corner to corner, press, corner to corner, press, thumb along the seam. He was terrible at it. His folds came out lopsided and doubled, and he kept trying to hide the bad ones at the bottom of the stack, and when she caught him at it and raised one eyebrow, he made a sound, a single small breath through the nose, 1 degree away from a laugh, and it was the first noise he had made in 11 days, though she had no way of knowing that. Mrs. Bay found them at 7:52. The supervisor's face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds and settled on the worst one. She stood in the doorway with her hands pressed flat against her thighs and spoke in Korean too fast for Adaize to catch all of it, then switched, badly, to English, which was how Adaize knew it was serious. You know whose child? You know? He was alone, Adaize said. There is camera, there is many camera, your face is in camera. Mrs. Bay swallowed. You are dispatch worker, contract. You touch guest, you touch VIP family, agency. She made a small cutting motion at her own throat, apologetic, almost tender. Aigu, Adasi, why? Adaize counted while Mrs. Bay talked, because counting was what she did instead of panicking. 47 days until her contract renewal, 1,900,000 won a month, of which 700,000 crossed an ocean on the 15th, to a bank in Enugu, where her mother's dialysis cost what it cost, and her sister Ngozi's school fees were due in June. 230,000 won already spent on the licensing exam registration she had told nobody about. 6 pages of Korean medical vocabulary taped inside her locker door. She had reasons to hand the boy over to security and go back to her cart. Practical reasons. Necessary reasons. He is 6, she said. He was standing in a room full of strangers, and every single one of them was pointing something at his face. I will write the report. I will sign it. She looked down at the crooked stack of towels. And I would do it again on Monday. Behind the funeral hall glass, on the 2nd floor landing, Han Do-yun had not moved for 4 minutes. He was 39 years old and had buried his wife that afternoon and had spent the last 11 days being steered, by his mother's aide, by the funeral director, by the 2 men from the group's communications office who kept saying the word optics as though it were a kind of medicine. When the doors flashed and someone said the boy's name, a hand had closed on Do-yun's elbow. Not now, sir, not in front of them, and he had obeyed, because obedience was the first language he had ever learned fluently, and while he obeyed, a woman in a mint green contract uniform had walked out of the service corridor with a laundry cart and made herself into a wall. He came down the stairs slowly. The lobby had emptied into the cold outside. He knelt in his morning suit, reached under the row of black chairs, and came up with a laminated badge on a broken cord, a photograph of a woman who was not smiling for it, a barcode, a floor number, and a name printed crooked in Hangul beside the English. The aide reached for it. I'll return that to contract services, sir. No, Do-yun said, and put the badge in his breast pocket, next to his wife's folded reading glasses. Find out where she lives, and find out what happens to a dispatch worker who disobeys security in front of 30 cameras. He paused, and for the first time in 11 days his voice had an edge in it. Then make sure it does not happen to her. By morning her name would be sitting on a desk on the 38th floor of a tower in Yoido, and Adaize Okoro, scrubbing a dryer filter at the end of a double shift, would have no idea at all. She found out at 7:40 in the morning, in the changing room of the basement laundry, from a phone held up by a woman she had eaten lunch beside for 11 months. The clip was 19 seconds long. It began already in motion. A white linen cart shoved sideways across marble, a crowd of black coats folding inward, a boy in a gray school jacket almost invisible between camera bodies. Then a pair of dark arms came into frame, and the arms took the boy by the shoulders and pulled. That was where the clip ended. The caption under it, in Hangul, read, "Foreign worker grabs Seniorum heir at funeral hall." 412,000 views, 2,000 comments. Miss Cho lowered the phone. Adayeze si, she said quietly. Is this you? Adayeze looked at her own hands, still pink from the sterilizing rinse, the nails cut short the way a nurse cuts them. It is me, she said. Why did you touch him? There were answers, that the security men had been holding back the wrong side of the crowd, that a photographer's elbow had opened the skin above the child's eyebrow and nobody had noticed because nobody had been looking at him, only at the space where his father would appear. That the boy had not screamed, had not cried, had made no sound at all, which was the thing that had moved her feet before her mind gave permission. A child in a crush who does not scream is a child who has already given up. That she had wrapped him in the gray towel from the top of her cart because it was the only clean, soft thing within reach, and had walked him backwards through the service door while a guard shouted at her twice in Korean and once in English. She said none of it. She said, he was bleeding. Miss Cho put her phone in her locker and did not look at her again. At 8:15, when Adayeze went to the wall scanner to clock out of her double shift, she reached for the badge that hung on the retractable cord at her hip, and found the cord hanging loose, clipped to nothing. The badge was gone, lost in the crush, probably, ground under 30 pairs of expensive shoes. Replacement fee, 30,000 won. Incident report, mandatory. She stood in front of the scanner for a moment with her thumb pressed to the empty clip, and understood that the machine had no record of her leaving, which meant she had never legally been there, which meant she would have to explain herself twice instead of once. The office of Myeongsu Total Care Services occupied 2 rooms on the 3rd floor of a building behind the hospital, above a pharmacy and a shop that sold funeral flowers. Team leader Kwon had a fan heater by his ankles and a calendar with a photograph of Jeju on it. He was not a cruel man. He was a man with a client. Sit down, he said. Do you know who the boy is? No. Seniorum Group is the client, not the hospital. Seniorum. He said it the way people say the name of weather. Their legal office called Contract Services at 6 this morning. Contract Services called me at 6:20. There is footage from 4 angles and in 2 of them you have your hands on the child's body. In all 4 of them, Adayeze said, there is a boy with blood on his face. Kwon rubbed his eyes. He had 11 Nigerian, Uzbek, Filipino, and Korean workers under him, and a margin so thin that a single lost contract would end the whole team, and he had a daughter in her 3rd year of university. He turned a form around on the desk and slid it toward her with 2 fingers. Voluntary resignation, he said. Effective today, it stays clean. No insubordination on the record. No report to the client. No reason for anyone to look at your work permit. In 3 months, I can place you in a hotel in Mapo. Night linen. It pays 200,000 less. Adayeze read the form. Her Korean was good enough for the words. Self. And. Wish. And. Company. And if I do not sign it, then Contract Services writes the report. Refusal to obey a security instruction inside a client facility. The agency holds your papers, Adayeze. Papers get reviewed. He said it without pleasure. I am not threatening you. I am telling you what the desks above me do. She sat very still and did the arithmetic she had been doing every month for 2 years and 4 months. The arithmetic that lived behind her eyes like a second language. 1,810,000 won, take home. 380,000 for the rooftop room in Daerim with the door that swelled in the rain. 600,000 sent home on the 28th, 40 of it for her mother's blood pressure tablets, the rest for Obiora's final year of engineering in Enugu, 90,000 for transport, 40 for her phone, and in a brown envelope taped under the drawer of her single wardrobe, 2,100,000 won toward the National Nursing License Examination fee, the certified translation of her Enugu credentials, the prep course she had been promising herself since the January before last. 4 years on a surgical ward at home, flashcards for Korean medical vocabulary taped to the inside of the dryer room door, read in the 11 minutes while the industrial cycle ran. Sign, and the ladder stayed. Refuse, and the ladder might be taken out of the room entirely. She thought about the weight of the boy against her ribs. He had counted under his breath the whole time she carried him. Hana, dull, set, net. Up to 8, then back to 1. His mouth against the collar of her uniform, his fingers gripping the pocket where she kept her lint brush. 8, and start again. He had done it 11 times before the corridor door closed behind them, and the shouting on the other side of it turned into a sound like rain on a tin roof. She looked at page 2 again. The room behind the linen store had a laminated table, a wall clock 2 minutes slow, and 4 people breathing. The woman from guest relations, her own supervisor from the staffing agency, who had not met her eyes once, a young man with a tablet, and the lawyer, who had introduced himself only as Attorney Shin and who had placed the document in front of her the way a nurse places a consent form, squared to the table edge, pen laid diagonally across it, the courtesy of a decision that has already been made. Page 1 was confidentiality, no press, no social media, no conversation with colleagues, guests, or family, a penalty clause in numbers large enough to be theoretical. Page 2 was a statement in her name, already written, already translated, the English underneath the Korean in smaller type. Most of it was true, the time, the floor, the service corridor, and then the third paragraph. At no time did any member of the press make physical contact with the child. The child remained calm and was not distressed. The undersigned acted at the direction of hotel management. Adayeze read it twice. On a surgical ward in Enugu, she had learned that the chart outlives everybody in the room. Doctors rotate, families forget, the chart stays, and whatever is written in it becomes the thing that happened. She thought about the bruise. 4 small ovals on the boy's left forearm, above the wrist, where a hand had closed and pulled while a lens came down toward his face. She had felt the man's knuckles against her own arm when she took the child. She thought about the counting, which is what a child does when he has run out of other places to put himself. And she thought about the last sentence, which would hand credit to the 2 men in dark suits who had stood 8 meters away with their hands folded, waiting for instruction, while a 6-year-old was pressed backward into a marble pillar. "May I use the pen?" she asked. Attorney Shin inclined his head. She signed page 1, full name, the way she wrote it on remittance forms, each letter separate and legible. Then she turned to page 2, drew 1 clean horizontal line through the 3rd paragraph, wrote her initials in the margin beside it, and signed underneath. The supervisor made a small sound. "That paragraph is standard," Attorney Shin said. "Then it should be easy to leave out." Her voice stayed where she put it. "I will not talk to anyone. Not to reporters, not to my roommates, not to the internet. I have signed that, and I meant it. But there is a mark on the child's arm, and somebody will see it, and when they do, this paper should not be the reason nobody believes him." The clock on the wall ticked its 2 slow minutes. The clock on the wall ticked its 2 slow minutes, and nobody in the room filled them. Attorney Shin picked up page 2. He read the struck paragraph the way a doctor reads a chart he already suspects. Then he read her initials in the margin, and then her signature underneath, printed above it in the same careful hand she used for remittance forms, each letter standing apart from its neighbor so that no clerk in Lagos or Seoul could ever claim it was unclear. "Supervisor," he said, without looking up, "the water cooler is in the corridor." The supervisor left faster than the door could close behind him. Shin took out his phone and photographed the page. He photographed the margin. He photographed her signature. Then he set the phone down, squared the 2 sheets, and folded his hands. "You understand that I represent the family," he said. "I do not represent you. I understand. If this paragraph stays out, someone above me will ask why a laundry employee refused a standard clause at 1 in the morning. Adayeze reached for the pen cap she had set on the table 20 minutes earlier and clicked it back onto the pen. "Tell them she was difficult." Something crossed his face and was gone. He drew an envelope from the folder, thick, unmarked, the flap tucked rather than sealed, and slid it across the table until it stopped an inch from her wrist. "For the inconvenience, your coat, your shift." She looked at it. She did not touch it. Her mother's blood pressure tablets cost 41,000 won a month, and her brother's school fees were due on Friday, and she could feel the arithmetic sitting behind her teeth like a loose tooth. She thought about the weight of the envelope. She thought about the weight of the boy. "How is he?" she asked. Shin's hands stayed folded. Later he would remember that she asked before she counted, and that she did not ask what the family was called. "Sleeping," he said. The doctor gave him something. Did the doctor look at his arm? The pause was longer than a lawyer's pause should be. "The child's name is Seo Woo-jin," he said. "He is 6. His father is Seo Jae-hyun." The name went into her like cold water into a cracked cup. She knew it the way she knew the ceiling of her own room. Every night she pulled bed linen out of a 2-meter drum and folded it against her chest and stacked it. and every sheet carried a small woven crest in the corner, and under the crest, in gray thread, the word Myeongseo. 2 years of towels, 2 years of pillowcases stiff with hotel starch. She had been washing this family's sheets since her 3rd month in the country, and had never once said the name out loud. "Ah," she said. That was all she said. Shin found it remarkable. At 2:14 that morning, while she was riding the first bus of the day home to Siloam with her shoes in a plastic bag, a delivery rider in Yeouido uploaded 41 seconds of vertical video. He had filmed it from behind the press line. In it, the reporters surge. A woman in a gray laundry uniform steps out of the revolving door with a small boy folded against her ribs, and instead of walking towards the cameras, she turned her back on the lenses and carried him the other way, towards the gray service door beside the flower display, one hand flat against the back of his head, so that not one frame of that video contained the boy's face. 41 seconds. In the last 4, her shoulder pushes the door, a boom mic clips the top of the screen, and a man's voice off-camera says, "Who is that? Who is that woman?" By 6 that morning, the clip had 90,000 views. By noon, it had 1,400,000 and a name, because the internet always gives you a name whether you ask for one or not. Hresek uniform imo. Gray uniform auntie. Somebody added subtitles. Somebody else slowed the footage down and drew a red circle around her hand on the child's head and wrote, "Look at where she put her hand." She thought about it first. Adayeze Nwosu slept through the first 6 hours of it. She lived on the 4th floor of a building in Siloam with a boiler that shuddered like a cough, in a room with a window that opened onto a rooftop of drying racks and cabbage crates. She got in at 3:40, drank water standing at the sink, laid her stockings over the radiator, and slept without dreaming until 9:20, which for her was luxurious. Then she went up to the roof in slippers and hung out 3 shirts and 2 gray uniform tops, one of which still smelled faintly of the lobby's lilies, and she stood for a moment in the cold with her arms crossed, thinking about a boy counting under his breath. Hana dull set. He had done it into her collarbone very quietly, the way people pray on aeroplanes. Her phone had 11 missed calls. Kemi first, from the fried chicken place 2 streets over, then a number she did not know, then Baycock Linen's office, then Kemi again, 4 times, and a message that said only, "ADA, they are calling you towel auntie, 1.4 million people." She watched the 41 seconds twice. The first time she looked at the boy, to check that his face was truly hidden. The second time she looked at her own back, at the ugly bunch of her uniform where his knees gripped her, at her shoes. She had been carrying them in a plastic bag by then, so in the video she is running in stockinged feet across marble, which is the detail 300,000 people would later say made them cry. Kemi called again. "Are you famous?" "I'm suspended," Adaize said, because the office had told her so at 9:41, in a voice so bored it was almost kind. They gave her the reason at 2 o'clock, in the Baycock Linen office in Yeongdongpo, under a fluorescent tube with a dead end. Section, Chief Park had printed things. He had printed the still frame from the video, in which the company logo on her sleeve was perfectly, catastrophically legible. He had printed the client's operating rules, Article 17, subcontracted personnel shall not appear in media relating to the property. He had printed the elevator access log from the 29th floor at 12:52 a.m., which listed 1 entry, and the entry was not hers. "You were on a guest floor," he said, "in a guest elevator, with a guest's child." Yes. There is no document that says anybody asked you to be. She had been waiting for that sentence all morning without knowing its shape. The night before, in a room with a wall clock and a bottle of water she did not touch, a man in a dark suit had slid 2 pages across a table and asked her to sign a statement of the evening, a statement in which the boy did not appear at all. 2 pages, 11 lines of typed Korean. The first page described an employee of a subcontracted housekeeping team entering a guest elevator at 21:12 without authorization. The second page described her leaving it at 21:16. Between those 2 times there was a blank space the width of a fingernail, and inside that blank space there had been a 7-year-old with 1 shoe off, 3 men with cameras, and a flash that went off so close to his face that he had made a sound she still heard when she closed her eyes. The man in the dark suit had capped his pen and set it on the table facing her, the way waiters set down a bill. She had not touched the pen. Her father had been a clerk in a land registry office in Enugu for 31 years, and he had said one thing to her so often, It had stopped sounding like advice and started sounding like weather. Read it twice, sign it once. She had read those 2 pages 4 times. On the 4th reading, she understood that the paper was not asking her to lie. It was asking her to be absent. Now it was 9:40 on a Thursday morning, 6th floor, a windowless meeting room with a wall clock, a bottle of water, and a chair that leaned slightly to the left. 3 of them across the table. Mr. Bake from Human Resources, who kept touching his tie as though checking it were still there. Director Huang from Security, whose phone lay face down beside his elbow. And a woman in gray who had introduced herself only as Attorney Song and who had not written a single word since the meeting began. 22nd floor, Beck said again, in a guest elevator, with a guest's child. Yes, Ndidi said. There is no document that says anybody asked you to be. No, she said, there isn't. Attorney Song looked up for the first time. She had received her instruction the night before from a number that did not appear in the internal directory, and the instruction had been 4 words long, and none of the 3 people beside her knew it. She watched the woman across the table the way a person watches a bridge they have been told to test. Miss Okafor, Song's Korean was slow, courteous, and edged. Nobody here is accusing you of theft or harm. This is a privacy matter. The guest has a legal right to have his family excluded from all internal records. If the child appears in your statement, the child appears in a document, and that document can be requested. Do you understand what we are protecting? I understand what you are protecting, Ndidi said. I don't understand what happens to what I saw. It stops existing on paper. He was 7, Ndidi said. And there were 3 men with cameras. She said it without raising her voice, which was somehow worse for the room than shouting would have been. Bake touched his tie. Director Huang looked at the ceiling tile above her head. The revised statement came across the table in a plastic sleeve. Song had added 1 sentence at the bottom, generous in tone, ruinous in effect. The employee acknowledges that her actions in the corridor were undertaken on her own initiative and outside the scope of her assigned duties. Ndidi read it twice. Then she pushed it back 4 centimeters, which in that room was practically an act of violence. I'll write my own, she said, by hand. You can attach it or not attach it. They gave her paper because refusing paper would have looked worse than giving it. She wrote for 11 minutes, first in English because her English was faster, then again underneath in the careful, upright Korean she had been building for 3 years out of night classes and delivery app menus. She wrote the time she stepped out of the service stairwell. She wrote the sound the second flash made. She wrote that a man in a black windbreaker had a hand around the boy's wrist, and that she had said, in Korean, "Please let go," twice, before she put her forearm across the child's eyes and turned him into her apron and walked him backward into the elevator. She wrote that a shoe, navy blue, size 190, had been left behind on the marble and that she had gone back for it after. She did not write anything about how the child had held 2 fistfuls of her uniform and had not made a single sound the whole way down. She signed it once. Bake read it and his ears went red. Director Huang read it and said nothing, which she noted, because he had been the one who let her back into the corridor for the shoe. Attorney Song read it last, folded it in half, and slid it into the front pocket of her folder rather than the back. And only much later would Ndidi understand that the front pocket was where Song kept the things she intended to carry upstairs herself. You are suspended pending review, Beck said. Unpaid. Your contract is with Hanbit Staffing, not with the hotel, so the hotel is not terminating you. Hanbit will contact you. How many days? That is Hanbit's decision. She unclipped her name badge and set it on the table between the water bottle and the folder. The badge had a bad photograph of her from her first week, taken under a fluorescent tube, and beneath the photograph her name had been printed wrong since the day it was issued. Knitted Okafor. She had asked twice for a corrected one. She had stopped asking and started covering the misspelling with her thumb whenever a guest looked at it. The plastic made a small sound on the tabletop. Nobody picked it up. In the basement locker room, the air smelled of steam and starch, and Hai Jin from the 18th floor was pulling a fresh apron over her head with her hair in her mouth. She watched Ndidi empty the locker into a shopping bag, a spare pair of black socks, a jar of tiger balm, a Korean grammar workbook with the spine broken at the causative form, a plastic hair comb. They will call you back, Hai Jin said. 3 days, maybe 4. They always call people back when the guest is important. It is the only good thing about important guests. A beat. Do not answer on the first ring. Ndidi laughed, once, surprising herself. At the bottom of the apron pocket, her fingers closed on something hard. a small yellow plastic dinosaur with the tail snapped off, still faintly sticky, pressed into her hand at 21:16 on Tuesday by a boy who had not said a word. She was still looking at it when she pushed open the service door onto the alley off Sogong Row, into cold air and the smell of a delivery van, and saw the black sedan idling where no car was permitted to idle, and the man beside it who straightened when he saw her face and said, "Miss Okafor, someone upstairs wants to know why you would not sign." Okafor slid the card into her coat pocket before she answered him, and she kept her hand there, flat against the paper, the way a person holds a passport in a crowd. "My shift ended 9 minutes ago," she said. Yes, the man beside the sedan had an earpiece and a folder and the particular stillness of someone paid to wait in cold alleys. His breath came out white. Behind him, a delivery van idled with its back doors open, crates of onions sweating under plastic, and one of the line cooks stood by the wall smoking, watching them both with frank interest. 5 minutes, 21st floor. There is a private room. Someone upstairs, she repeated. He had said it as though the ceiling itself had opinions. Yes, she did the arithmetic where he could not see it. The 11:40 bus from Namdaemun, which she would miss. The taxi that would replace it, 7,000 won she had already assigned to her sister's textbook fund. The night shift she was scheduled for on Thursday, the contract that renewed in March, the sponsorship stamp in her passport that belonged, technically, to the hotel's banquet division and could be withdrawn by a signature no larger than a fingernail. 3 years in Seoul had taught her the exact weight of every inconvenience. She could carry most of them. She had learned which ones broke her. 4 minutes, she said, and followed him inside. They did not take her through the lobby. They went up the service lift with its quilted gray padding and its smell of banquet gravy, past the 12th floor where the linen carts lived, and the man held the door for her with 2 fingers, and neither of them spoke. In the mirrored panel she saw herself as they would see her upstairs, hair tied back under the black band she wore for service, mascara gone soft after 11 hours, the small burn scar on her wrist from a soup tureen in her first month. She straightened her collar because it was hers to straighten, not because of them. The private room on the 21st floor had been cleared, which meant somebody had eaten there and somebody else had erased the evidence. 12 chairs, 1 long table, a window that gave the whole of the plaza below, the ice rink still lit, the traffic thinning along Sogong Row into a thread of red. A woman in a gray suit stood at the near end with a tablet held against her chest like a hymn book. The folder from the alley appeared on the table in front of her, and beside it, precisely squared, a white envelope. Miss Okafor. The woman's English was excellent and expensive. Thank you for your patience. There has been a misunderstanding about the document. There has not. The woman blinked, 1 beat longer than politeness allowed. I'm sorry? I read it twice, in Korean first, then the English, because sometimes they are different. Okafor kept her hands at her sides. Line 1 says the child was never in the West Service Corridor. He was there for 11 minutes. Line 4 says a banquet trainee propped the fire door. She did not. The door does not latch when the humidity is high. I have written it in the maintenance book 4 times since October. Her name is Bora. She is 22 and her contract ends in February. She let that sit. If I sign, she goes home in February. If I sign, the corridor is empty on Tuesday. So no. There is compensation for your inconvenience. I know. It is on the table. 2 million won. It is still on the table. The woman glanced past her, and only then did Okafor understand that they were not alone, that the third person in the room had been standing in the dark to the left of the window the entire time, where the glass gave back nothing but the plaza. He turned. He wore a charcoal coat indoors, unbuttoned, as though he had been about to leave for some time and had kept not leaving. Late 30s, perhaps, a face arranged for meetings. She had seen the surname on the folder's letterhead earlier that evening and had recognized it in the dull way one recognizes weather. It was on the side of the tower by Yuljiro Station and on the shopping complex where she had once queued 40 minutes to return a rice cooker, and on the plastic card the hotel issued for staff meals. The woman in gray said something quick and low in Korean, and he lifted 2 fingers, and she stopped. You covered his face, he said. Okafor's Korean was good enough for banquet service, sturdy enough for the immigration office, and it deserted her entirely in that room, so she answered in English, yes. With your kurot, he said, in the rain, and then you stood in front of the lens until the car reached him. There were 4 of them, she said. 1 had a step stool. The Korean words she could not find earlier were still gone, so English carried her, flat and plain, the way she spoke when she was tired. Outside the window, the rain had thinned to a gray mist that blurred the office towers into columns of soft light. Somewhere below, a delivery scooter whined up the hill. Inside, the room smelled of cut oranges and floor wax, and a tray of barley tea sat untouched on the low table between them. 3 cups, all cooling. He did not ask why. He asked, "What did you think would happen to you?" Okafor considered the question honestly, because it deserved that. She had done the arithmetic while it was happening. She always did. She had done it since she was 19 and counting coins for a bus in Enugu. 8 trays of canapés still stacked in the service corridor. A banquet captain who wrote incident reports in small, furious handwriting. 20 minutes off the clock, unpaid. The possibility of a line in her file that a foreign staff member had left her station and touched a guest. "I thought I would be written up," she said. "I thought it would be worth it." Why? Because a child should not learn that his face belongs to strangers. The man in the dark coat did not move. The woman in gray wrote something on her tablet with 2 fingers, quick and silent. Then she leaned forward, set a card on the table, and turned it so that it faced Okafor squarely, the way she might place a spoon. Okafor looked at it. The name printed there meant nothing to her. She had never once heard it. The word above the name meant a great deal. It was the same word stitched in gold thread on the left pocket of the uniform she had folded into her locker 40 minutes ago. The same word pressed into the brass plate inside the staff elevator. The same word on the plastic meal card in her handbag that gave her a bowl of rice and 1 side dish for 1,200 won. The floor was heated. She felt it through her socks and thought, absurdly, that she should have worn better shoes. "You work in my hotel," he said. "4th floor. Banquets." Her voice came out steady. Her hands, resting on her knees, had gone still in the particular way that hands go still when a person decides not to let them shake. 9 years old, your son? 7. He was very brave, she said. He did not cry once. He held my sleeve and he walked. Something moved across the man's face and was gone before it finished. A flicker, quickly governed, like a light behind a curtain in a house that is supposed to be empty. The woman in gray noticed it too and did not look at him. She reached down instead and lifted a garment bag from beside her chair, laid it across the table, and unzipped it 4 inches. Inside was a coat. Long, pale camel, cashmere, the collar still stiff with newness, a tag hanging from the sleeve on a silk ribbon. Beside it she placed a white envelope, unsealed, thick enough to hold its own shape. "For the inconvenience," the woman in gray said in careful English, "and a replacement. Your own was ruined." Okafor looked at the coat for a long moment. It was the most beautiful object anyone had ever put in front of her in this country. She thought about the Goshiwan room in Sindang with its window the size of a laptop and the plastic drawer where she kept her passport and the sound the water heater made at 5 in the morning. "I don't want the money," she said. "I want my coat." The woman in gray blinked. It was rained on. There was mud from the... It is a black coat from the market in Dongdaemun. 39,000 won, 2 winters ago. Okafor's chin lifted very slightly. "There is a pocket sewn into the lining. On the left side, under the seam. My mother taught me never to keep all my money in one place." The room went quiet in a new way. "How much?" the man said. 420,000 won. She said the number without shame, the way she would say a bus number. "My mother is having an operation on her eyes in March. My brother collects the money at the bank in Enugu. I keep it in cash because the transfer fee eats it, and I keep it in the coat because I do not trust the lock on my door." She did not ask for it. She stated it and stopped, and let the silence belong to them. The woman in gray turned to the man and spoke rapidly in Korean, and this time Okafor caught enough. "The residence." "Va." He would not. "Nah." The young master. To understand before the translation came. When it came from him. "The coat is at my house," he said. "My housekeeper tried to take it to be cleaned last night. He would not let her." A pause, exactly 1 beat too long. He slept with it. He put his arm through one sleeve and would not take it out. Okafor set her hands flat on her knees. For 11 months, the man across the table had watched people hand his son. For 11 months, the man across the table had watched people hand his son things. A violin from a family friend. A watch too heavy for a 6-year-old wrist. A tablet loaded with every cartoon on the peninsula. 3 therapists, 2 of them foreign, all of them expensive. a puppy that had to be returned to the breeder after 4 days because the boy would not look at it. The house in Hanam Dong had a room upstairs filled with objects that had been offered and set down and never touched again, and now his son had chosen a second-hand wool coat the color of dried hibiscus, bought at a market stall in Dongmyo for 12,000 won, missing its third button since November. He would not let her wash it, the father said again, as though the sentence needed checking. It smells of the road, it smells of you. Okafor looked at the tea in front of her, which she had not touched, in a lobby cafe where a pot of tea cost more than her lunch for a week. It is only a coat, she said. It is not. She let that sit. She had learned, in 3 years of Seoul, that men who spoke in short sentences were usually men who were used to nobody interrupting them, and she had also learned that correcting such a man rarely helped anyone. So she waited, hands flat on her knees, the way she waited beside beds when families argued about what their mother would have wanted. He reached into his coat and set a card on the table between them. Heavy stock, a small pressed mark in one corner. She recognized the name from the side of a building she passed twice a day on the 143 bus, where it glowed white above the river even in the afternoon. I am not asking you to keep him, the father said. I am asking you to come to the house once. Saturday. Let him return the coat to you himself. If someone takes it from him, he will decide the world takes things. If he hands it to you, he will have given something back, and I think—" He stopped. His jaw moved. I am told he needs to give something back. Told by whom? By a woman with 3 degrees who charges 400,000 won an hour and has not heard his voice. And you think a coat will do it. I think he slept in a sleeve. The espresso machine shrieked behind the counter. A waiter drifted close, read something in the man's stillness, and drifted away again. Okafor did the arithmetic. She did it the way she did all of it, quickly, without letting it show in her face. Saturday was her long shift, 6 to 6, the shift that paid the weekend rate. Bo Young would swap for it, but Bo Young had already covered the 2 nights in December when Okafor's chest had gone tight and hot, and she had coughed her way through a fever she could not afford to see a doctor about, the fever that had come, though she never said this to anyone, 4 days after she walked from Anguk Station to Jongno 3ga in a cardigan with no coat. Swapping again put her another shift in debt. Her visa allowed the hospital and nothing else. A private arrangement in a private house was exactly the kind of small mistake that got people put on a plane. There was rent on the 15th. There was the transfer to Enugu on the 20th, her brother's second semester fees, and her mother's blood pressure tablets, and the 80,000 won study book for the licensure exam she had been promising herself since October and had not yet bought. "What are you offering me?" she asked. Plain. She had decided years ago that pretending money did not matter was a luxury for people who had it. He took an envelope from the inside pocket. He did not slide it forward. He set it down flat, which she noticed, and which she would remember later. For the coat, and for the shift you will lose. How do you know I will lose a shift? Because you looked at the ceiling when I said Saturday. She almost smiled. She pushed the envelope back 2 inches with one finger. I will not take money for the coat, she said. If I take money for it, then I sold it to your son in the middle of the road, and that is not what happened. Then what happened? He was a child in the road with 20 cameras in his face and no one standing in front of him. She lifted one shoulder. Anyone would have. The man's hand closed slowly on the tabletop. 11 people walked past him, he said. I counted them on the footage. 11. Before you. The words landed somewhere under her ribs and stayed there. She came to terms with him the way she came to terms with a difficult family at handover. Clearly, once, with everything named out loud. She would come Saturday morning for 1 hour. She would come as a guest and not as an employee, because her permit did not stretch, and her pride stretched even less. She would accept the cost of the swapped shift and nothing beyond it, and he could give the rest to the children's ward on the 4th floor of the hospital where she worked, where the heating failed on the east side every February. And there would be no photographs. Not of her, not of the boy, not of the door she walked through. No cameras, she said. No cameras, he repeated, and inclined his head, and for one moment he did not look like a name on the side of a building. She did not get to Saturday. On Thursday at 4:20 in the afternoon, 12 minutes before the end of her shift, Okafor came out of the stairwell into the main lobby with a laundry cart and stopped so abruptly that the wheels squealed on the tile. The boy was standing by the information desk in his school shoes. Over his uniform, buttoned crookedly, sleeves swallowing his hands, hem hanging past his knees, he wore a dark red wool coat with a missing 3rd button. Behind him stood an older woman in a gray housekeeper's cardigan, her handbag clutched to her chest, apologizing to the receptionist in a low, continuous stream. Beside her, a driver in a suit held his cap and looked at the floor like a man who knew he would be blamed. He would not eat, the housekeeper was saying. Since yesterday morning, he would not eat, he would not go to school. He took the car keys off the hook and put them in my hand and pointed at the door, and he wrote this. She held up a torn page from a school notebook, 4 Hangul characters and a wobbling arrow. The lobby held maybe 20 people. 2 of them had already recognized the boy. One of them, a young man in a puffer jacket waiting for a prescription, was standing up slowly, lifting his phone, thumb sliding across the screen to open the camera. Okafor let go of the cart. Okafor let go of the cart. It rolled 20 centimeters across the polished floor and stopped against the leg of a bench, the tower of folded gowns leaning without falling. 9 steps separated her from the boy. She used 2 of them to do the arithmetic she always did before she did anything, because arithmetic was cheaper than regret. Hand over at 6. Mrs. Coe with the clipboard and the pen she clicked when she was displeased. Rule 4 in the laminated staff booklet. Housekeeping personnel do not engage with visitors, media, or family members in public areas. 43 days until her sponsorship letter came up for renewal. The 28th of every month, the transfer to Enugu, the school fees, her brother's second year. She took the other 7 steps anyway. The man in the puffer jacket had his phone up at chest height, the way people hold a phone when they want it to look like they are checking the time. Okafor put her back to him. She lifted the mint green blanket off the top of the cart, clean, still warm from the dryer, folded into a square the size of a pillow, and shook it open with one snap of her wrists, and brought it down over the boy's head like a hood, and drew the loose end across her own shoulder so that from behind it read as laundry and nothing else. The boy went rigid under her hand, not the stiffness of fear exactly, the stiffness of a child who has learned what hands usually mean. "Don't run," she said in Korean, low, her grammar careful and slightly too formal, the way night class Korean always is. "Walk with me, slow, like we are bored." He walked. "It's him, right?" The puffer jacket had turned to follow, sideways, half-crouched, prescription forgotten on the counter. "That's the kid. From April. Ajuma, move. I just need his face, 1 second." Okafor stopped and turned around, and let him have her own face instead, filling his frame with the shoulder of her gray work tunic and the plastic badge clipped to it. "He is 10 years old," she said. "That's not, you can film me." She said it evenly, no heat in it, the tone she used for drunk patients at 4 in the morning. "Film me all you want. Put me on the internet. He is 10. The man's thumb hovered. Somewhere behind her, a woman in a beige coat had already given up on the confrontation and was moving with much better instincts toward the sliding doors to get the exit angle, because that is where everyone eventually walks out. Okafor changed direction. The staff corridor entrance sat between the pharmacy window and the elevator bank, a gray door with a scuffed steel kickplate and a card reader that glowed a small tired red. Employees only, supply access, laundry, morgue transfer. She knew what the reader did when it opened. It wrote her employee number and the time into a log that Mrs. Coe printed every Monday, and it wrote them next to a door that no housekeeping staff had any business opening at 5:52 in the morning with a member of the public in tow. She pressed her badge to the reader. The beep sounded absurdly cheerful. Inside, the temperature jumped 4 degrees and the air went thick with bleach and warm cotton and the deep vibration of industrial dryers turning somewhere below. Okafor guided the boy 3 meters down the corridor, past the trolleys, and lowered the blanket off his head, and let go of him immediately, and stepped back so there was a full arm's length of nothing between them. He was shaking. Small, contained shaking, mostly in the jaw. She did not tell him it was going to be fine. She turned to the staff water cooler, filled a paper cone, and held it out at his eye level until he took it with both hands. Then she reached into the pocket of her tunic and brought out the mandarin that was supposed to be her breakfast, and sat down on an upturned crate of detergent so that she was shorter than he was, and began to peel it. The peel came off in one long spiral. She had always been able to do that. He watched it the way children watch something with no danger in it at all. She broke the fruit and offered him half. He ate one segment, then another. His jaw stopped shaking somewhere around the 4th. The gray door opened again and the woman from the lobby came through it sideways, out of breath, still holding the torn notebook page like it was a document that could be stamped. She looked at the boy, then at Okafor sitting on a detergent crate with citrus on her fingers, and seemed to lose whatever sentence she had prepared. "He wrote it at the nurse's station," she said finally. "On the counter. He wouldn't hand it to anyone else. Not to me, not to the head nurse. He wrote it, and then he put his hand flat on top of it and waited." The boy did not look up. He was working through the second half of the tangerine, section by section, the way Okafor had shown him, pulling the white thread off each piece before he ate it, because she had said that was the bitter part, and he had believed her. His shoes did not reach the floor from the crate he sat on. His navy blazer had a smear of dust across the shoulder from the corridor wall, and the fourth button was gone. Miss Cho held out the page. Okafor wiped her fingers on the front of her uniform before she took it, because citrus on paper leaves a mark that never comes out, and because she had learned in 11 months of night shifts that the way you touched other people's belongings was a language of its own. The page was lined, torn along the top edge where the spiral had held it. 3 lines of pencil, small and level, the strokes pressed hard enough to dent through to the other side. She read the Hangul slowly. She had passed the intermediate exam in March, and still moved through handwriting like someone crossing a stream on stones. The name of that person. She did not take a picture. Please do not send her away. The linen room hummed. Somewhere behind the wall, a dryer turned over with a sound like a slow train. Okafor read it a second time, then a third, and the third time she understood that the first line was not a statement but a question, asked by a child who had been carried through a wall of flashing cameras by a stranger and had no word to call her by. "He has not spoken since last May," Miss Cho said. Her voice had gone thin at the edges. "Not to the doctors, not to his father. He writes for school. He does not write for people." Okafor set the page on the folding table. She took her pen from her breast pocket, a cheap blue one from the convenience store on the corner, chewed at the cap, and wrote beneath the boy's pencil, in careful print, "Nena Okafor." Then, underneath, in Hangul, the way her landlord wrote it on her rent receipts, "Un Nena." She turned the page around and pushed it across the table. Minwoo studied it while he chewed. Then he took the pen from her hand without asking, crossed out the first syllable, and rewrote it. He added a stroke. He put the pen down and pushed the page back with one finger, and the expression on his face was the mildly offended patience of a boy who had been correcting adult spelling his entire life. Okafor looked at the correction. "So the landlord is wrong." The boy nodded once. "For 2 years he has been wrong." He nodded again, and something happened at the corner of his mouth that was not quite a smile, but was in the same family. He turned the page over and wrote on the clean side, "Yun Minu, Yezersal." Then, after a pause, he added, "The sheet was very clean." "It was fresh from the 3rd load," Okafor said. "You were lucky. The 2nd load smells like the hallway." The door banged open on its own weight. Team leader Kwan filled the frame in her gray vest with the laminated badge and the clipboard she carried the way other people carried a passport. She looked at the boy on the detergent crate. She looked at the woman in the coat that cost more than the linen room's annual budget. She looked last at Okafor, and her voice arrived flat and fast. "Cart 9 is standing in corridor 3. Unattended. 22 minutes. Yes. The count is short 1 flat sheet, size 2. Yes. Where is it?" "In the security office," Okafor said. "They took it as part of the incident." Kwan's jaw moved. She wrote something. "The public relations office has already called twice. There is footage. A woman in housekeeping uniform, on the marble, in front of the press line," she said. "Housekeeping uniform. The way one says a license plate number. You are on a 1-year contract with a foreign worker sponsorship. Do you understand what that footage is?" Okafor understood exactly what that footage was. She had been doing the arithmetic since the elevator, 480,001 for the room in Silim, with the window that did not close, 90,000 for the licensure prep class on Saturdays, the transfer she sent home to Enugu on the 12th of every month, because her brother's school fees did not care about her contract review. She had done that arithmetic in the lobby too, in the 2 seconds before she moved, and the answer had come out the same both times, which she found irritating and clarifying in equal measure. "They were standing on him," she said. "He is 8. 16 cameras and a man with a boom. He had his hands over his ears and he had stopped moving. I had a clean sheet and 2 free arms. You are not authorized to touch a patient's family." He was not a patient's family in that moment. He was a child in a crowd. "Do you know," Miss Cho began, and her hand rose slightly, the way a hand rises when it is about to place a family name on a table like a weight, "whose son that—" "It does not change the sheet count," Okafor said. The dryer stopped. In the silence, the boy slid off the crate, walked past Kwan's clipboard, and held up the torn page, pencil side out, chest height, the way one shows a ticket to an inspector. Kwan read it. Her pen stopped moving. Footsteps came down the service corridor then, unhurried, expensive, the leather kind that the linen room never heard. They stopped in the doorway. A tall man stood there in a black suit with his tie loosened 1 centimeter, hospital gray under the eyes, a phone in his hand with the screen still lit on a paused frame of white cloth and a small navy blazer. Yoon Do-hyun did not look at his assistant, or at the team leader, or at the peel on the table. He looked at the woman on the detergent crate, and his face did the small collapsing thing that faces do when a still image becomes a person. "You," he said quietly. "The sheet." Minwoo turned, and then, for the first time since the previous May, the boy crossed the room and put something directly into his father's hands.